Hey, welcome to my channel. It's a Tailored Life. My name is Taylor, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about Vbacs. I recently had a Vbac. Well, my Vbac was about 9 months ago. My son is 9 months old now. But my first son, he's 5 years old, and I had to have an emergency C-section. So in this video, I kind of want to give you guys my top 5 tips. I have my phone here because I don't want to forget. And when it comes to talking about labor, pregnancy, Vbac, C-sections, I can go on and on. So I do have my phone with my notes to kind of help me keep focused on these top 5 tips that I think will be helpful in helping you have a successful Vbac. Now, I'm not a medical professional. Let me say that again. I am not a medical professional. These are just my tips from my experience. I am going to mention towards the end of this video a medical professional who I do know personally, who can definitely help you all with any questions that you may have when it comes to Vbacs or labor and delivery. So let's go ahead and get into the video. Okay, so let's jump right into it. Tip number 1 is do your research. I know that sounds very broad and that could mean anything, but literally it's the best thing that you can do when you're trying to have a Vbac. Research a Vbac. Make sure you completely understand what it is and if there are any risks to it. For me, having a Vbac was not very risky at all, but I know depending on what type of C-section you had, different medical providers may have different opinions about that, and it's just good to go with the medical provider that you trust and speaking with them about any risks that you may have. Another thing that you may want to research is why you had a C-section. I know for me, when I went to my provider and I expressed to him that I wanted to have a Vbac, the very first thing he asked me was, why did you have a C-section? He also let me know that he would be looking at the medical notes from my C-section just to make sure that I was a good candidate for having a Vbac. Why you had a C-section does matter, and a lot of providers will ask that. So try to make sure you have a good understanding of why you had a C-section. Sometimes when we're in labor, especially with a C-section, you're on a lot of medication, things can get woozy, you may not remember what happened and things like that. So it's really good to make sure that you know and understand what happened. You also want to make sure that you know and understand what a Vbac is and what it means to have a Vbac. That brings me to tip number 2. Making sure that you find the absolute perfect provider for you. Your provider does not have to be a doctor. It could be a midwife, or if you do go to a doctor, you could possibly bring a doula with you. These are some great options to look into. When it comes to having a C-section, there's this myth around it that once you have a C-section, you have to always have a C-section and you can never deliver vaginally after that. That myth, I feel like, comes from sometimes some providers do not offer Vbacs. So what they'll say once you have a C-section is, no, you cannot have a Vbac. You're going to have another C-section. Well, really, if you just take your time and do some research in your area, you may be able to find a provider who does offer that service. For me, as soon as I knew I was pregnant, I joined a Facebook group that was for women who were doing Vbacs in my local area, and I did research on all of these providers that these women were saying that they went to. I found someone near me who was very supportive, and I talked with him as much as I could about my Vbac. I expressed what I wanted. He told me he could make it happen. He also expressed to me what I needed to do and what he would expect for me for this to happen. Any medical issues that he may have had with me, like just making sure that there were no risks there. And again, this is something that is kind of person to person, because whatever medical provider you trust and you decide to go with, you know, what you all discuss and work out will be between you. So for me, making sure that I found the provider was very crucial. My doctor who I did my first C-section with, she would not do a Vbac, and she actually works at a practice with a bunch of doctors, and none of those doctors offer Vbacs. Even the hospital that I delivered my first son at does not allow Vbacs. This is why it is so important to do your research and make sure you're picking the right provider. All right, so tip number 3 is stay healthy. This is so important. I feel like when you decide to have a Vbac, the cards are kind of stacked against you. Any little thing could go wrong and they will say you need to have a C-section. I made sure I did my best with eating right, taking a walk every day, taking my vitamins, anything my doctor asked me to do. I made sure to do these things because what I didn't want is I didn't want to come in one day and he say, oh, it looks like you're gaining a little bit too much weight, or you're not moving enough, or something's going on with the baby. I wanted to make sure that every time I came in for an appointment, I was giving my best self. He was getting me at my healthiest, so this way I'm more likely to go ahead and be approved for that VBAC. When you are throughout your pregnancy, your doctor or provider or midwife may at the beginning of your pregnancy say, yeah, sure, let's go ahead and let's do this VBAC, but you kind of don't have the VBAC until you actually have the VBAC. So I just did everything along the way to make sure that I stayed healthy. I stayed at my best at every appointment. I would do yoga and make sure I was doing stretches because my provider, he supports VBACs, but he does not allow you to have Pitocin if you are trying to have a VBAC. He feels like inducing labor is a little bit too much on a mom who's already had a C-section. So for me, I wanted to make sure that when it was time to go into labor, my body would do it on its own. I would be flexible and limber to push out a baby on my own and not really need a bunch of help, which actually worked out for me. My water broke at home. I went into the hospital at about 4 a.m. and at about 4 p.m. I was pushing Lincoln out on my own. No Pitocin, nothing to help induce labor. It all came naturally. But I feel like me staying active, staying on yoga, going for walks, staying healthy really helped support my body to go ahead and do what it needed to do naturally. All right, that brings me to tip number 4. And I think I've said this in tip number 1. Advocate for yourself. If you are not comfortable advocating for yourself, have somebody there with you. Have a doula. A doula can be so helpful. For me, with this pregnancy, I actually requested to change doctors. This is so important. If you do not feel comfortable at a doctor, if a doctor is not answering your questions, midwife, any type of provider is not giving you the answers that you're asking, if things aren't making sense, things don't feel right, it is okay to switch doctors. For me personally, I had to see a specialist that I went to for my ultrasounds. This provider was not making me feel comfortable. He was telling me things that just didn't sound right about my situation. Every time I went into this office, I felt extremely uncomfortable and I would leave so sad and upset. My husband had to advocate for me in this situation because sometimes when we're pregnant, we're really nervous and vulnerable and all we want is for our baby to be healthy, and we go into mom mode and we don't always speak up for ourselves. My husband was that person for me. When things weren't going the way that I wanted them to go, it didn't click to me right away like, hey, you should say something. But it was really good to have someone in my corner who said, hey, this isn't right. You might need to look into this. And I ended up switching providers. This helped me so much because the provider that I was seeing was about to suggest that I needed to have a C-section that I did not need to have. This is why it's so important to pick the right provider also. So advocating yourself and picking the right provider, they kind of go hand in hand, but they are definitely necessary. Make sure that you're speaking up. If someone says that you have to have a C-section, they may be correct, but it's okay to seek a second opinion. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to say no sometimes. Just make sure that the person who you have advocating for you is someone that you can trust. I feel like doulas are a great option. This pregnancy, I did not have a doula. With my first pregnancy, I did work with a doula, and they're just so helpful and so informative. And sometimes, like I said, when you're pregnant or even when you're in labor, you can kind of just really get caught up in the moment and just go along with whatever may be happening. I know for me with my C-section, I had to have an emergency C-section. I was in labor. I had been in labor all day long. I was at about 6 centimeters when they realized that my son was breech. And they were like, oh no, we didn't know this. No one knew this. Like, I was this close to possibly pushing out a breech baby without anyone being prepared. This is why I feel like having the right person in the room can help catch these type of things and speak up for you. I remember feeling relieved actually when they told me that they were having a C-section, because I was so nervous and afraid, like, oh, you know, what is going to happen? So just make sure that you are speaking up for yourself, or you have someone around you that you can trust to speak up for you. So my fifth and final tip is to be prepared for whatever may happen. Remember that the most important thing is that you and your baby go home safe and healthy. Whether it's a C-section or vaginal delivery, it does not matter. The most important thing is that you get to go back home and be with your family and bring your new baby home. I know for me, this time around, I made sure that I did tons of research on a Vbac, but I also did tons of research on having a multiple C-sections. I wanted to know that no matter what happened, I could take care of myself, and my family was also prepared to help care for me. With my first son, like I said, I had an emergency C-section. I had been in labor all day, but I had done no research on anything about a C-section prior to having him. So I had no idea what the recovery would be like. And I came home and I was a wreck. I was sad and depressed for the longest, and I felt like it was so much tied into what I thought my going home experience would be like. I thought I would deliver this baby vaginally, go home, and on day 3 of us being home, we would be going outside, going for walks. And for me, it was the complete opposite. I went home and my recovery was ugly. I was not going for walks for about a week. It took me a lot of time to get healthy and healed again before I felt really good. But what I wanted to make sure this time around was, if I did have a C-section, for whatever reason, I was mentally prepared for it. I was physically prepared for it. This again ties into making sure you stay healthy, making sure you're active. This will help your recovery go a lot faster, making sure you're taking your vitamins that are already helping your body to heal itself and be healthy. These things are so important, whether you have a vaginal delivery or not. I ended up getting cut in my vaginal delivery. So again, healing after my Vbac was very important, but I was prepared because I had researched so many things. I made sure I understood any and everything that could possibly happen, and I think that's very important. So that is my final tip. If you are pregnant right now, I wish you the very, very best. I wish you a happy and healthy baby. I wish you a happy and healthy pregnancy. I wish you an even happier and healthier delivery and a recovery, no matter which way you have your baby. But I do hope that if you are wanting a Vbac, you do get to have your Vbac, and make sure that you're doing everything in your power to make sure that you can have it. You're advocating for yourself. You're going to the right providers. You're staying healthy. You're being prepared. Be prepared for your baby to possibly come early also. I know for me, my second son that I delivered vaginally, he came at 36 weeks. So I delivered him early. And again, it was a good thing that I had done tons of research, because at first I thought if he came early, I would have to have a C-section. I thought any little thing goes wrong, I'm going to have a C-section. And my provider actually allowed me to deliver him vaginally. Everything was safe. Everybody went home. Within the 2 days that it took for us to go home, we were perfectly fine. So I'm wishing you the best. I hope this video was helpful. Oh, and let me just say, if you are in the South Florida area, even if you are not in the South Florida area, you can go on Instagram, and I'm going to put her Instagram handle below. Her Instagram is Midwife Tia. She's in the South Florida area, a wonderful midwife. But if you aren't in South Florida, you can definitely contact her, send her your questions. Any questions that you have for me about my experience, I will be more than happy to answer. If you want to write me personally directly into my message box, you can write me on Instagram and my DMs. I will put my Instagram information on this video as well. But let me know down in the comments any questions or comments you may have. I'm more than happy to help. If you guys would like to hear a labor and delivery story about my VBAC, please let me know. I'd be happy to do that. Like I said, I can go on for hours about pregnancy, labor, delivery, VBAC, TOLAC, all of those things. I have researched them all. I have experienced a C-section. I have experienced a vaginal birth. So any questions that you may have, just let me know. And thank you so much for watching this video. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up. And please do consider subscribing to my channel. I am a wife and a mom of 2 boys. I make lots of mom content. I do cleaning and motivational videos and cooking videos every Sunday. So go ahead, subscribe, and if you do subscribe, make sure you hit that bell notification so you can get notified every time I post a new video. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.